Co-activation of our deep core and pelvic floor is our third and final tip for being proactive in our pelvic health and overall health in general. The best way to build consistency in exercise over time is to find something that you enjoy doing so you will keep doing it. This can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people, from CrossFit to Pilates, from interval training to yoga, and anything else in between. The important thing with exercise is that you find something that you enjoy doing. These tips about how to incorporate the deep core and pelvic floor into any exercise that you're already doing are going to be super helpful and things that you can continue to do without having to think about it too much or change up your exercise routine. We first have to know how to find these muscles and then incorporate them into activities and motions in order to perform them well. You can check out some of my previous videos on things like transverse abdominis activation and pelvic floor activation, such as how to do a Kegel, in order to feel confident in activating these muscles in isolation. But we know those muscles work better and perform better when they're incorporated with other synergistic muscles into this entire system. To see how you can incorporate those muscles into movements that you might already be doing, check out the next couple videos on how to incorporate that deep core and pelvic floor into things like lunges, squats, deadlifts, in order to improve your efficiency in how to do these exercises and continue to be proactive about not only your general health, but the health of your pelvic floor. This is going to be a variation of a single leg glute bridge, but we are going to be overlapping our deep core and our pelvic floor into this exercise to make it a little bit more specific and more complete. From this position, we are going to start by engaging our abdominals. This you should do whenever you are doing a hip hinge motion or a glute bridge motion to any degree, but let's be specific here about getting the abdominals on. We're going to start by doing a nice exhale and feeling our ribs come down, back, and in, and we already feel more of these internal obliques on. From that position, we're gonna do just a small posterior pelvic tilt and feel that belly button come a little bit more back towards spine, and we feel some of this waistband tightness. Not six-pack tightness, but more of these lower abdominals engaged from this starting position. We are gonna keep those abdominals involved throughout this motion, but we're gonna start to test them a little bit by picking up the leg that's starting on the ground. We're gonna pick that leg up slowly towards us as we maintain those abdominals engaged. She did this nicely without anything else moving other than that leg. From this position, as we start to lift those hips up, we are gonna lift the hips with an exhale. So we're gonna use that exhale to help us engage our abdominals, engage that glute properly, and maintain some spinal stabilization. But we're also gonna use that exhale to engage our pelvic floor. When we exhale, that pelvic floor is going to lift with us and draw up, back, and in as you do that Kegel motion upon exhale. We're gonna let that go as we inhale. From this position, our abs are on, our spine is nice and stabilized here. Without that back arching, we are gonna begin to lift our hips off of the ground by only extending through that hip joint with a nice exhale, and we're gonna lift hips as that pelvic floor draws up, back, and in as well. As we inhale and let that go down, we're gonna let that pelvic floor relax. And then every time you raise that glute slightly up and get that extension at that hip, that pelvic floor is going to lift. Every time we lower, that pelvic floor is also going to lower in that position. This position is going to be a stagger stance deadlift, but we are going to utilize, again, our breath in order to get more of our pelvic floor and our deep core involved in this exercise. A stagger stance deadlift is a great way to train your glutes and your hamstrings, but we're also going to layer on some of this pelvic floor expansion and recruitment in the same exercise. As we go through this exercise, we are again going to use our inhale as we start to lower into this hip motion in order to help stretch this posterior capsule of the lead leg hip, but also stretch that posterior aspect of our pelvic floor. We're going to exhale as we stand up and think about lifting through our pelvic floor as we move through that hip, using that glute to move us from backwards to forwards in this position. As we go through this motion, we're going to start in a little bit of a stagger stance. The knees are going to just be slightly bent. Again, the more we bend the knees, it's going to take a little bit of that stretch out of the hamstring and put more emphasis on building that glute muscle. From this position, we are going to start to go into this hip hinge. That weight's going to be on our opposite side. We're going to start to inhale as we go down into this position. Now we're gonna inhale and we're gonna feel a lot of that stretch through this entire posterior capsule here. That's exactly what we want. As we exhale, we're gonna think about pushing that foot through the ground and lifting our pelvic floor as that hip goes from back to front. Let's see this one more time. We're gonna start to inhale and expand into this posterior capsule here, feeling that pelvic floor relax and stretch. And as we exhale, we're gonna push that heel through the ground, using that glute to go from back to front as we lift up with that pelvic floor.